When people stand up for justice, when we stand up for what's right, we gather people of conscience. They are two sides of the same rusty coin. But as an independent, I can answer to the people of Ilford North.
What makes you so confident you're not going to be one of those normal MPs?
They give everything they have to the party and they lose their moral autonomy. It definitely takes courage to fight the two-party system, and I'm standing to win. I don't want them to hoodwink people into believing that the Tories can win.
The Muslim community sometimes doesn't get involved and they don't participate.
This is the most important vote in your life.
For a long time, the established political parties have ignored the concerns of Muslims in all Western countries. Actually, they ignore the concerns of most ordinary people. But over Gaza, they have shamelessly echoed the Biden administration and have purged their parties of Palestinian voices. The UK Labour Party today serves Israel and an international order that remains unequal and sided to the interests of a few global elites. This electoral system is now being challenged by independents across the country, and someone who probably symbolises this movement is British Palestinian organiser Leanne Mohamad. For years, she has been working as a community organiser and activist and is now standing to become an independent MP for Ilford North. This seat is held currently by Labour's rising star, Wes Streeting. But he has a large Muslim population enraged by his party's horrible position on the Gaza genocide. Leanne Mohamad, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the Thinking Muslim.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Well, it's really great to have you with us. I know it's your final few days of campaigning. How's the campaigning been so far?
It's going amazing. We are very hopeful. We are determined to win, and we're out every single day getting every single vote that we can. And so we are very hopeful for the 4th of July. I hope to make it an Ilford North Independence Day.
Tell me a little bit about your campaign, because I was speaking to Dilly Hussein the other day, and he was commenting on how professional your campaign was from the outside. Tell us a little bit about how your campaign has been run.
My campaign is being run by a people-powered movement. It's a grassroots movement. The campaign team is all volunteer-based, and we have volunteers coming from all around the constituency and the country. And these are volunteers who represent the beauty of our campaign being under the shared banner of humanity. They are volunteers from all different faiths and none, all different backgrounds and colours, young and old, and it's just so nice to see everyone come together for the sake of this cause and for the sake of believing in something bigger, in this campaign that brings so much hope to people in such a depressing time in politics.
You know, there is an impression, especially that comes from like the right wing, that your campaign is with, it's for Muslims and it's gathering Muslim volunteers. I had a chance yesterday to come along to one of your gatherings that you had a rally in the park, and I was amazed by just how many non-Muslims were present. I mean, how did you make that happen?
So when people stand up for justice, when we stand up for what's right, we gather people of conscience, people who believe in the same causes that we do. And so it's been so wonderful to see, many people, different faiths and backgrounds. I've got majority of my volunteers, you'd be surprised to know they are non-Muslims. The canvassers on my campaign, they're not even Muslim. And it just shows that this campaign is about so much more than just refusing to vote for a ceasefire in Gaza. It's about our community, it's about, hope for a better country, and it's about grassroots, building something from the grassroots that inspires people to really want to get involved and believe that something is greater when the people unite.
I've watched a video of yours where you say you want to break free from the two-party system, and I think you used the phrase a two-party nightmare. Like, what do you mean by this?
It's a two-party nightmare because the problem with the two-party system is that, ideologically, they're both the same. They are two sides of the same rusty coin. And we saw the BBC leaders debate. If you close your eyes, you'd believe interchangeably they are the same, right? Tweedledee and Tweedledum. And I think that's the problem with politics today. The two-party system is just a way of no representation for us in our communities. And it's a travesty, I would say. With the two-party system, MPs have to answer back to their party leadership. They are tied to a party whip and a party line, and they just can't be themselves, and they can't represent their constituents in the way constituents deserve to be represented, community representation. That's what we don't have with the two-party system. And so what I'm standing on here is, giving my community the chance to have a community-driven voice, and both of these parties don't offer that to us. But as an independent, I can answer to the people of Ilford North. I can truly represent them without having to be tied to any whip or line by a party.
You know, Leanne, often I go and speak to Muslims across the country, and they say that they always come across Muslim candidates who say to them they're going to represent the community and they're going to be moral and they're going to stand up against, you know, foreign policy that may harm the interests of Muslims across the world. But when they end up in parliament, they do something different. I mean, Khalid Mahmood comes to mind from Perry Barr. What makes you so confident you're not going to be one of those normal MPs?
Because I'm independent. The frank nature of standing as an independent MP and not having to sell out for the sake of, you know, fitting into a party. And I think, again, with the two-party system, these MPs, yes, they might say, you know, they'll stand up for the rights of Muslims, they'll stand up for what's right. But at the end of the day, they come into the system with a party and they have to answer back to their party leadership, otherwise they'll get kicked out. And so they give everything they have to the party and they lose their moral autonomy. And that's what we can't have, you know, as Muslims. So I think the way forward for us Muslims and people of conscience and other people as well, you know, who are disillusioned, disenfranchised with the system, is that this independent movement is the way forward for us, where we don't have to compromise, where we are unapologetic in representing the people and their interests in the way they deserve to be represented.
I often come across people who say that, what can one person do? I mean, Leanne, you know, you've got a very strong campaign and it seems like, inshallah, you know, you may get there, you may win this election, but you're one voice. There are 649 other MPs in Parliament. How's one person really going to make a difference?
Well, my question here is, what would one party MP do to make a difference? Because, you know, quite frankly, most of the MPs are going to be tied to a party. But these independent voices are the difference. These independent voices are the people that we need to hold government to account. And to really be the voices that represent hope in such a place where, you know, we're going to have a Labour government landslide no matter what. Labour are going to get into power and we need voices to hold them to account, to represent the people.
Well, I want to ask you about Gaza. Now, I know that, I mean, I've looked at your pledges and it's, you know, you've got a very broad platform, NHS and cost of living and crime. But of course, Gaza is probably what propelled you into this campaign in the first place. On Gaza, you've talked about having not just a ceasefire, but having, you know, a ban on weapons and sanctions on Israel. You know, that takes a lot of effort. And at the moment, the parties are not going there, both the Conservative and the Labour parties. What makes you confident that you'd be able to account government sufficiently for them to do things like this?
A ceasefire is not enough. And with everything that's happened and with MPs refusing to vote for a ceasefire, for them bypassing the SNP motion as well, they need to be held to account. And so a ceasefire is no way near enough. We can't say permanent ceasefire now while still sending arms weapons to Israel. There has to be an end to the arms embargo. And I will use my voice to push for that. We have to work hard. We have to push further. Because the Palestinian issue is much more than just state recognition or calling for a ceasefire. It's about addressing the root causes. And by addressing the root causes, we have to end the occupation. The occupation cannot end whilst weapons are still being sent over to Israel. And that's why, as a Palestinian, a British Palestinian, my role is to really stand up for justice and stand up for my people and speak truth to power. And that is what I will be unapologetic in doing. And I think these voices now, these pro-Palestinian voices that we are trying to get into Parliament, are extremely important in such a time where even the opposition that we thought would once stand by us and speak for us have completely abandoned us.
I noticed that your campaign seems to have gathered people beyond just the one issue of Gaza. And that seems to be really interesting and important because, of course, there's a mischaracterization that people like you are just a one-issue, you know, one-issue candidates. I mean, I've noticed that doctors have come around you and teachers have come around you. In fact, yesterday I came to this rally and the head of one of the big unions in the country was present and speaking on your behalf. How important are these other issues in your campaigning? Gaza
is important, and no doubt I always say it's what has brought us together. It's brought about an awakening, so it's extremely important. But again, that's not what my campaign is solely focused on. My campaign is based on so many various pledges that I've put together after having a listening and engagement period with my friends and neighbours in Ilford North. And so, you know, these pledges are focused on education, on youth services, on protecting our NHS, on making our streets safer, tackling the cost of living crisis, and of course, social justice. And everyone who comes and joins my campaign, they see how broad this campaign is, that it's not just about Gaza, it is about so much more. And, you know, yesterday in the rally, it was present. We had healthcare workers come down, we had teachers come down to support, we had elderly, we had youth, we had people of faith and none. And that's the beauty of the campaign. It's under a shared banner of humanity. With healthcare workers, you know, I've spoken to local doctors over the past months, and they are extremely worried about the future of our NHS. I'm standing against the Shadow Health Secretary, next Health Secretary to be. You know, hopefully we're going to get him out of that. But people are extremely worried about the future of our NHS, and we are doing all we can to educate people, you know, about the fact that he's opening up the doors to more private provision, and to show that another way is possible, that we can actually do something for our NHS here in Ilford North. And so the pledges that I have put together have resonated with many, many people. And that's something that I am very proud of. And I think we can all see it. It's having a very positive effect on our community to see that another way is possible here in having our voices heard.
At the beginning of the interview, I mentioned that you, in a way, you symbolize or almost lead this sort of independent movement across the country. I mean, how do you feel about that? Like, do you see yourself as a leader here, as someone who's sort of spearheading this independent movement?
I think it definitely takes courage to fight the two-party system, but I'm not the only independent standing. There are many of us, and we all have an important role to play, and we are all leading in our own ways, in our own parts of the country. But it's great to see the independent movement growing. I was selected in January. I was, I think, the first independent to be selected by my community. But ever since then, we've had so many more independents be put forward, and who are all leading, you know, what I'm seeing, fantastic campaigns, people-powered, grassroots community campaigns. And it's wonderful to see people get involved in that kind of politics. People are travelling from up and down the country because they see no hope in where they are based, but they want to join these campaigns that inspire them. And I think it's great to actually be able to mobilise the people, you know, people who want a different kind of world for us and for the future of their children.
Yeah. Yesterday I met one of your canvassers, a chap called Christian, who's just struck me as someone who was devoted to your campaign. Tell me a bit more about your volunteers, please. Yeah. And Christian in particular.
So Christian's a volunteer who joined my campaign when the election was announced, and he's now renting out a place in Ilford North for the last week of the campaign to support me and to help. And he's been great. You know, he speaks like 6-7 languages. He really touches people's hearts on the doors. And he's originally from Suffolk, so he used to travel in very far, you know, few hours in, few hours out from Ilford every few days. But now he's just completely taken a place. He's helping us lead on canvassing. And it's just wonderful, you know, to see people devoted to that level to my campaign. I just really didn't think that I would have these people join. Also, Janet and John, you know, John is actually the previous director of Greenpeace.
Wow. Really?
And he's been on my campaign for many weeks now, helping, and to have someone like that join the campaign also means so much, and it represents so much as well.
I've got a lot of international viewers, and they may not know about your story. I think most people in the UK now probably know how you became an important figure in sort of the activist movement. Just talk us through, you know, your background in terms of what happened when you were 15 years old.
So when I was 15, I was nominated by my English teacher at Wanstead High School to take part in the Jack Petty Speak Out Challenge. And this is basically like the largest speaking competition for young people in the world. And previously I was just a very shy, quiet girl who just get on with her working class. And I would just have never thought about doing it or taking part, but she believed in me, she forced me to do it. And I ended up winning, becoming first in the Redbridge Regional Final. And I delivered a speech titled Birds Not Bombs on Palestine. My basic message was, you know, Palestinians, my people, they were human beings and their plight was a stain on humanity. And it won with applause. Everyone was extremely proud. I was proud of my achievement, but then this happy moment was hijacked by online trolls who were out there to discredit me. And it became an issue where, you know, I was subjected to an avalanche of online abusive comments and videos because the video went viral. It got taken down by Speakers Trust, and I was labelled a good little Miss ISIS girl. And I was called many different things, from ISIS recruiter, 15-year-old suicide bomber. And this was huge in the media and local papers as well. And it became a police matter. And all the advice was to just shut my Twitter down, effectively be quiet, and it will all go away. And so it was a formative time for me. It was a difficult time. But I was determined to carry on. No one was going to silence me. And I've just continued ever since then. In a way, they've helped my voice be heard even further and widen the fight for human rights. And I've simply continued. I've had overwhelmingly so many people support me who I didn't even know. A hashtag Let Leanne Speak went viral. Many people started to invite me to conferences, universities, events, parliament to speak and to actually give me a platform. And I've been continuing with that activism since I was 15. And yeah, I've just carried on standing up for truth, speaking truth to power, and not giving them what they want.
Leanne, tell me about your background. Tell me about your family.
So I'm a British Palestinian. My grandparents were part of the 1948 Nakba catastrophe. They were forced and expelled from their homes in Palestine in Haifa in 1948 by Zionist militias, and they ended up being refugees in Lebanon. And so along with 750,000 other Palestinians, at the time we saw 500 towns completely dispossessed and exiled. They had to make their way over as Palestinian refugees with only what they could carry on their backs, and they ended up in Lebanon thinking it would be only a few days, maybe weeks, at most months before they returned to Palestine, their homeland. But they never returned, and they were permanently forced out of their homes and homeland. And so till this very day, my grandfather passed away in that refugee camp when I was only 4 years old, but my grandmother still remained in that camp along with so many others of my family. And so I was born here, but I come from a Palestinian refugee family background. Ilford has been my home my entire life, and I was raised in that community. I went to school in that community. I made friends in that community, and it's been so wonderful to have this sort of family. My friends and neighbours in Ilford North are very tolerant, and it's a very loving, kind, respectful community. And I feel that, this isn't represented at all, by these two parties who just stoke up so much hate and division. Unlike Keir Starmer as well, who, is trying to say that immigrants should be sent back home. And you saw recently his comment about British Bangladeshis, about migrants, sending them back. This is the sort of hatred that he's trying to stir up to win over right-wing conservative voters. And that's something that we have to move away from now. We have to move away from Labour completely. But this is the Britain that I love, right? And this is the beautiful aspect of my community that is never represented and it's never shown, but it's truly what lies in Ilford North.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, of course, especially foreigners, when they look at Britain, they'll get the impression of Nigel Farage or, Suella Braverman and, the end of multiculturalism. You seem to be painting a picture of a different type of Britain that still exists. I mean, how true is that really?
It's very true. I mean, Ilford North is a diverse community. And, even when I'm campaigning, I'm canvassing, there are people who disagree with me, but they are very kind. No one has been extremely hostile. The only hostility you get are keyboard warriors. But in the community, like in person, people are very kind and respectful. And I've had such positive responses from people who aren't Muslim, who aren't like me, but who simply just respect community, humanity, our differences that bring us together rather than divide us. And I think that's been the beauty of growing up in such a wonderful community that tolerates everyone.
In one of your videos, you talked about your background as a community organiser. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Like, what have you done for the community in Ilford?
So I was a local Ilford youth worker for a few years at my local youth centre for Ilford Clubs, which is a wonderful place. Then I used to deliver public speaking workshops, leadership skill workshops for young people in the community. I used to teach debate as well within my community. I then, during COVID, took part and organised with the Redbridge Mutual Aid Food Bank, which was absolutely needed during such a difficult time that our community went through, helping people in Ilford North who were isolated, who had no one around them, and who were in dire need during such a difficult time for all of us. And so my work in Ilford North began at a very young age within the community, and that's how people recognise me today. So I'm not just someone who's sprung up for the sake of this election. I've been a member of my community, an active member, who simply just cares and wants to help the people around me, my neighbours, my friends in Ilford North.
I mean, there is I look at some of the comments on your videos, and the overwhelming comments, and you get a few trolls. The overwhelming comment is, how authentic you are and how genuine you are, in terms of your interactions with your voters or your neighbours, and you call them your friends and neighbours, I think, in your constituency. Is there a danger that politics will corrupt you, Leanne? I mean, you're young, and there is this impression that once you join Westminster, you become like them. I mean, West Streeting used to be a county. He always talks about the fact that he grew up on a county estate. Now today, he's the furthest from. I think most people in Ilford North would say, where is Wes? He's never around, right? What's the danger for that happening to you?
I'm someone who's local and I have strong moral principles, and I'm also unapologetic in what I stand for. And that's why I'm standing as an independent, because I will never sell out, and I am someone who will always answer to my friends and neighbours in Ilford North. This is my community and I'm not going anywhere. I'm sticking in my community and staying there. Because that's where, my family are, that's where I was raised, that's where my friends are. And I'm here to serve my community, to be, their servant and not their master. And I'm not someone who's here for, my own interest, for status or money. I'm here to serve my community, and that's what I will continue to do if I have the honour of hopefully representing my community.
There is a debate going on about the current situation in the UK, and of course the Tories, the Conservatives, are hated here in Britain. And there is a fear that although the Labour Party are terrible and on Gaza they're horrible and they've got this very authoritarian bent, maybe they'll be a little bit better than the Conservative government who've really ruined this country. You've got a sizable Tory vote in your constituency. Is there a danger that your independent campaign may split what they call the progressive vote and allow the Tories to win?
So in Ilford North, there is no chance of the Tories winning. There is no chance of me splitting the vote. It's a clear two-horse race between myself and Labour, between myself and West Streeting. And that's why an independent can really win. It's only a 5,000 majority. We've had a boundary change, and people are waking up that it's time to break away from the two-party duopoly, that Labour doesn't serve us anymore, that we have a locally invisible MP who his time is now over. We have to get him out. We need someone who actually will speak for us. And so that's why the seat is a winnable seat, and I'm standing to win. We're not here to split the vote. There is no chance of that. And so I don't want them to hoodwink people into believing that the Tories can win, because there is no chance at all.
You really think you can win this? Yeah.
I'm in this to win. We are in this fight to win, and we truly believe that we can. Seeing all the responses and how positive people are about this campaign, and all the support that we've gathered, it's truly very hopeful, and I hope the results will pay off on the 4th of July.
I suppose I'm asking because the impression is that if you're largely, I know you've said you're not depending just on the Muslim vote, right? But you've got a sizable Muslim population, and by default they should be voting for the only Muslim Palestinian candidate that's standing or can plausibly win a seat in this election. But, the darker side is that the Muslim community sometimes doesn't get involved and they don't participate, and they may not turn out for elections, and they're probably in the stat of, the third or quarter of voters who don't vote. How confident are you that on the day, these 26,000 Muslims in Ilford North are actually going to come out to vote for you?
I hope they will, and we're doing all we can to make sure they come out, because I keep telling them that, look, this is the most important vote in your life. There are actually many Muslims who've never voted in their life before who are actually going to come out and vote on the 4th of July, because they believe that, this is something different, this is something bigger and independent, and we can really win. We can mobilise the community. The community feel empowered. They feel excited about this. And so I'm hopeful that they will come out. And I think that I tell them that, look, this is the least that we can be doing right now as a community. Standing up for ourselves, but also standing up for oppressed people around the world, oppressed people in our community. There is so much to this right now, and I don't think people understand how important their vote is. But every vote will count, and that's why it's so important for every single person to get out on the 4th of July and vote.
That's great. Is there a generational difference here? I mean, I feel that after the Iraq War, for example, 2 years after, Muslims tended to still vote for the Labour Party. There seems to be a difference today where a red line has been drawn, and the Gaza genocide has woken a lot of people up to what the Labour Party is really about. So do you feel that people of your generation are different really than generations past?
Definitely. I think my generation have seen an unfiltered suffering for population live streamed in front of their eyes, a genocide, and this is like one of the worst atrocities we've seen in modern history. It's not been easy at all, and I think none of us expected it to last for 9 months. Seeing this general election around the corner and seeing that they have the opportunity to hold these politicians accountable who've allowed this to continue and who refuse to vote for a ceasefire, it's a way of actually taking political action to help Palestine, and I'm really happy that my generation have woken up. I'm really hopeful, and I think it's about time. I think it's about time that we do something about this and get involved politically. I think for too long Muslims have not been engaged enough in politics. I think this time is different. You know, the tide is truly changing and the time for change is now.
What do you need from Muslims, non-Muslims now? Like, what's your big ask? What do you need from the community around you?
My main ask is volunteers now. We have only a few days left. We don't need their money, we need their time. Because it's a people-powered campaign. It's a campaign that will be won on the ground in Ilford North, on the doorsteps. And we need as many people to help us. You know, come to Ilford North, come help us distribute leaflets, knock on doors. You know, if you are a driver, if you can help us through any other way, we just need people. And I'm calling on anyone around the country. You know, we've had people come from all around. Come down to Ilford North. Polling day is the most important. We need as many people with us. We need to get the vote out.
You want
Thursday, the 4th of July, we have to get the vote out. And so it'll be great to see as many people as possible in Ilford North on that day.
Well, that's great. Inshallah, I hope to. I mean, there's a reticence. I find with many within our community, you've just said it previously, that a larger number of non-Muslims have joined your campaign, probably as volunteers. Yeah. Is that fair to say?
Yeah.
Than Muslims. Like, what's holding our community back?
I think our community aren't used to canvassing and, you know, going around knocking on doors, and you just don't know what monster's going to be behind the door, what kind of person. So I think it's something a bit uncomfortable, right? But I do think that this is the time to step out of our comfort zones. And that's exactly what we've been doing. And there are Muslims who've come out canvassing with me. There are many, but we need many more. You know, our community need to get involved in this sort of stuff. And it's not as uncomfortable as it seems. It's actually very fun. It's been exciting. It's been enjoyable for all of us. And I think, you know, throughout this campaign, we've learned so many skills as well. All of us volunteers who've been on the campaign, we have learned so much. And these are lifelong skills that we will carry with us even beyond this campaign. That's why it's so important for young Muslims to get involved in politics, because you learn so much about yourself, but you learn so much skills that you'll definitely need in the future. And so, you know, canvassing, we've had more non-Muslims. Leafleting, I feel Muslims are happier to do that because it's just not talking to anyone, just leafleting. Like, it's leafleting to sport is what I say. But I think it's time that, you know, we become politically more active in every aspect of campaigning.
So what's next for you, Leanne? After the 4th of July, that's the date of the election here in the UK, what happens next?
I think we have built a phenomenal movement, and I think that this isn't the end of the journey for anyone, for any independent standing around the country.
Yeah.
This is the movement that we will build upon. We will continue, and we will garner more support through it. You know, I've never seen so much people gather for these kind of campaigns. You know, we never expected this to happen, this movement. But it's been so wonderful to see people come together for something bigger and to really bring our talents and skills as a community to use for something like this, so grassroots and powerful. And I think there is so much more to come from here. Something is growing, something is happening, and I'm really excited for what's to come. We are going to continue. This isn't going to end, and I'm very hopeful for what's to come.
Leanne Mohamad, Jazakallah khair. Thank you very much for your time today.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you.
Please remember to subscribe to our social media and YouTube channels, and head over to our website thinkingmuslim.com to sign up to my weekly newsletter. Jazakallah khair.